Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and you take time to listen to the podcast. Really, really appreciate you. And because you've been listening in, you have helped us get ranked in the top 5% of all podcasts globally, according to Listen Notes. So thank you so much for being here. And I would love it if you could just review, rate, subscribe to the podcast, and help us keep it going. So, today, I'm talking with Dr. Erin Baker. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Erin. Dr. Erin is an executive and entrepreneur coach, social psychologist, and author of the best-selling, wait for it, Joyful AF. The essential business strategy we're afraid to put first. They are on a mission to help entrepreneurs and executives in good for the world organizations cultivate more prosperous, difference making, and purposeful businesses and lives by weaving joy into the fabric of their organization, culture, and business strategies. Welcome, Dr. Erin Baker.
Well, thank you, Dr. Robin. Wow. I love hearing my bio. It's like, I know my bio, but I love hearing it because every time I think, oh yeah, this is what I get to do every day. This is pretty cool.
Okay, so that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Since I read that sort of official bio, why don't you tell us
Yeah.
in your own words, first about you, whatever you want to say about you, and then about the work you do?
Yeah. So I will say I'll start with I have always been obsessed in a good way with understanding the human mind, the human emotion, and how to really create amazing, joyful lives. But I never had the word joy in my vocabulary. I just always was interested in how do we help people do that. And about 6 years ago, I was working in the tech industry and realized that my joy was not in the tech industry anymore, that I really wanted to. I kept coaching people out of their jobs accidentally because as soon as I'd ask them things like, how do you want to grow? What do you want to be doing? What feels purposeful? What feels joyful? They would go, oh, not the job I'm doing right now. So at some point, I went, I should probably not be within a corporation. Let me try this coaching thing. And joy was not on my radar as a word, but I stumbled upon it a few years ago and realized, oh my gosh, that's been sort of everything I've ever pursued in life. And every time I follow my joy, that's when what I call success happens for me. And so now I'm really passionate about this is there's so much stress, loneliness, hustle, grind in the all work cultures right now. And I'm here to say, what if joy can be front and center? And what if not only can it be front and center, it actually can take you further than you ever imagined possible? And so that's what I get to do every day is help people rediscover what joy is for them and follow it.
I love that. No
Yeah.
surprise there for anybody, for you or
Yeah.
anybody else listening, but I love
Yeah.
that. But now
Yeah.
let's go back to that moment. You said you
Mm.
stumbled across, first joy was
Yes.
not there. And so tell us about that
Yeah.
stumble. What was going on then?
Yeah. So I decided in the pandemic that I wanted to write a book. And I will say very openly, it was a selfish endeavor. I had this belief that I'm not the type of person who can write a book, but I know I have things to say. So I decided I was going to write a book. And I wasn't sure what I was going to be on. I had a podcast at the time and I started writing and writing. And I just kept hitting dead end after dead end of I'm writing all these things, but there's just something missing about the book. And at some point, I asked my now ex-wife, she works with a lot of entrepreneurs, and I said, what is the thing that your friends are struggling with most? And she said, they don't want to hate their businesses and they don't want to hate themselves while running their businesses.
Mm.
And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then my brain immediately said, well, what's the positive framing of that? And immediately the word joy came to me. And it was so interesting because I have a colleague who, for a long time, thought he was running the World Joy Movement. And when he would say it, his face would light up with the biggest smile I've ever seen in my life. And I thought, yeah, Niyama is going to run the World Joy Movement. That's for him. And then as soon as the word joy came out of my mouth in the car with my ex-wife, I went, oh, what if it's for me too? And what if it's for everybody? And what if that's the thing I've been trying to write about all along? And I went back and looked at everything I was trying to write about and looking at all the markers of when was I most successful in my business, in my professional life. And I went, oh, it's when I followed this thing called joy. And suddenly the book emerged as it's got to be about being joyful. And then it became an entire exploration of, well, what is joy? What is this thing I'm talking about that wasn't even in my vocabulary? What does it look like? And then, the whole book emerged around, yeah, what is this thing? Why are we afraid to follow it? Why do we need to follow it? How do we lose it? How do we get more of it?
Yeah, and you're answering my next question because I was
Oh,
going to
good.
ask what's the premise of the book? All right, so you
Yeah.
gave us that little bit of teaser. So you
Yeah.
started with what is it? What is it?
Yeah. So it's very different than happiness. And I want to start with that because we are a world who's obsessively chasing happiness.
Yes.
And happiness, and I'm coming at this from both a scientific lens and just I did a lot of research asking people about what joy and happiness were to them. And I got really cool answers from different people. But when you think about happiness, most people are thinking about the promotion, the job title, the car, the external circumstances that we're all chasing, the rewards, the successes. Problem with happiness is that we have a happiness baseline as human beings. And so if we get that promotion, we get that job, or we get that car or whatever it is, we feel that elation for a while. But everybody knows new car smell wears off, new job wears off. You get that, celebrate that promotion, and then you go right back, right?
Yes.
So happiness is not sustainable, and happiness is reliant on something else happening outside of you, right? A
Yes.
circumstance. Joy comes from within. Joy is a deep sense of satisfaction and contentment. And it's something I always ask people to think about the moments that create the most joy for them. And yeah, some external circumstances could be there, but people often say it's something that wells up from within
Mm,
them, that they can create or feel joy at any moment, right? And if I even say, where do you feel joy in your body? It's very different than where people feel happiness. Happiness sometimes lives in the head, and
mm.
joy lives somewhere deeper. And so what I say is don't chase happiness at the expense of your joy, because your
Ooh.
joy can be there in the moment. Joy can be in the journey and in the process. And if you follow those moment to moment things that light you up, that give you a sense of, I talk about this in the book, a sense of connection to purpose, connection to yourself, connection to others, the things that pique your curiosity and your creativity, force you to be courageous. If you follow that, you'll get those external things, but you won't be miserable along the way.
Ah, yes, yes. Now tell me about, it never occurred to me. Well, I don't know that it didn't occur to me that people would be in businesses that don't bring them joy because
Yeah.
I've been focusing my conversation on women in particular who are in careers that are not, their own business,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that people in business start those business because they have some sort of passion for it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
now I'm hearing from you, there are people in business who don't have joy in their business. Am I hearing
Yes.
you correctly?
Yes, you are. So one of the things I say to people is almost everyone I talk to starts their business for some form of joy, autonomy, freedom, right? And it's the first thing that they lose.
Ooh.
And oftentimes, if it's someone who's come out of a corporate life, and I will say this is something I experienced very personally, is whatever shackles I thought corporate put on me in terms of, what I should do and supposed to do and how I was supposed to be and how many hours I was supposed to work and, all those things, I then shackled myself as an entrepreneur. And I started looking around at building my business and going, what am I supposed to do? What does a good entrepreneur do? What is the best strategy? And I could find myself very quickly caught in hustling and grinding in ways I didn't want to, caught up in business strategies that didn't feel like they fit me, but I was told I was supposed to do them. And it's really easy to create success and then create this mental picture of, well, how did I get there? Oh, well, it was hard. It was kind of miserable. but I guess that's what I have to do to be successful. And so this brain association becomes, I have to be miserable to be successful. And so if I say, well, what if you want to be joyful? They go, well, no, joy will bring it all down, crashing, burning, fire, flames, right? But then I said, well, but why'd you start your business? Well, I wanted more joy. Well, okay, then something's got to give here, and we've got to get you back to joy. And what if success actually is even bigger and better on the other side? What if you don't have to miserable it through your business? And
And
people,
have you, I'm
yeah,
sorry, have you
yeah, go ahead.
seen that transformation?
Oh, yeah, all the time. And I don't ask people to do it like it's not a flip flop overnight. I don't say, okay, we're going to stop everything and focus on joy. It's okay, let's do an audit of your business. Let's look at everything. And I'm saying this to people who are in corporate or in other jobs. You can do the same thing for your job. Do an audit of every project, every activity, every person you're working with, every thought that goes through your head, and see which ones are draining my joy and which ones are contributing to it. And I tell people, get a piece of paper out, draw a line down the middle, follow yourself for a week, and have everything written out in columns. And then what you do is you look at that column of things that are draining your joy and you do one by one. Okay, this project is not draining my joy. Do I have to do it? If you do, yes, then how can I make it more joyful?
Mm,
And if you don't have to do it, get rid of it. Right. And some of it is that people are, I talk about joy a lot as not just the things that light you up, but things you're really good at and genius at. And people get put into roles where they're not doing the things they're best at. And
yes.
so I often try to help people realign to what are your gifts, your strengths, your geniuses? How does your brain uniquely work? How do you like to do things? How do we get you more into that? And so when they do this audit, we can do it one by one, trying out little new things. And so it takes a little bit of time, maybe even several months. But at some point, they realize that they've realigned their entire work towards this sense of joy. And then, oh my gosh, I'm making a bigger impact. I feel more connection to my work. Hey, if you're working in a corporation, I'm getting recognized for my work. If you're running a business, I'm making more money. Wow. But it's a process for people.
I love that you're doing
Yeah.
that work. I love
Yeah.
that. It is so,
Yeah.
it's so closely related to the work I do, but I that's not the only reason why I love it. I think it's
Yeah.
important. I mean, just from
Yes.
a health perspective,
Yes.
physical and mental health and emotional health and spiritual health, all of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, since you work with a lot of women, I'm finding that the more I say 95% of my clients are women. And
Mm,
I'm finding that it's easiest for women to lose their joy because we're so good at looking around at what we're supposed to do, who
mm,
needs us. And there's also just in corporate structures in particular that women have to work harder in certain ways to be recognized. And then they're also juggling whatever roles they're playing outside of work. And many of the women I work with are mothers and wives, and they're often doing very purposeful work. And I'm a very strong bleeding heart. And so I can say, how dare I feel joy when the people I serve need me? Right.
oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's been really interesting that there is almost a gender divide when I talk to people about joy. The men I talk to are like, okay, cool, but how does that help my business's bottom line? And when I talk about joy with women, they go, oh wow, you mean like I might actually not be so stressed anymore and burnt out? I might actually be able to like my work again. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So now, is there any part of you when you were a child, a small child going to school, do you see any part of you then, little Erin, reflected now in what you're doing today?
Yeah. Um, so I was as a little kid, I loved basketball. I tell my friends that I was born with a basketball in my hand. And that was my greatest joy. And I use that as an example because in the late 90s, early 90s actually, when I was younger, girls didn't play basketball that much. Like it's not like today where like we're in the middle of a resurgence of women's sports and especially women's basketball. It was just not a thing. And yet I followed my joy.
Oh.
And I became pretty good at basketball. I didn't end up playing in college, but I learned so much about what I was capable of and what success could mean in the face of this is not who I'm supposed to be. I'm not supposed to play basketball. I don't care. I'm going
Mm.
to follow my joy. I'm not going to fall in line with what traditional girls or boys do. And so I see that in my work now where I'm helping people. Really, joy to me is, like I said, it's about finding your strengths and your geniuses, but it's really about coming home to who are you and your most authentic self, and how can you live from that place? And what if you, in your natural genius and authenticity and soul purpose, is what's going to create the whatever you want to create in the world, impact, success, good relationships, etc. And so I
Yes.
see that little kid in me all the time. And as you talk about this, I actually, since I know we're on video, I keep a little picture of little me around all
Oh,
the
so
time. And
cute.
for the listeners, I'm wearing a little bow tie, a little smile on my face. And so I always remind myself, follow this little kid's joy.
I love that. And not just any smile, a vibrant smile.
Yes, I was born with a vibrant smile. I've been told I have smile lines in my eyes because I've smiled too much in my life.
I don't think it could ever be too much
Yeah.
from one person
Yeah.
who smiles to another.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. And
Yeah.
the reason why I bring up the when you were a child, because I'm hoping for the people who are listening, who are really looking and they're at the place where they're saying, I'm craving more meaning. There must be more than
Mm,
this. I'm looking for purpose. And you gave a wonderful illustration of how to actually work through and find that, in my
mm-hmm.
opinion. But I often find if people go back to their early years, there's something there that
Yes.
if they renew it and bring it back to life in their current life, it will make a big difference.
Yeah, I asked the same thing of my clients. What did you love to do when you were 6 years old? What were you naturally drawn to? And I think
Yeah.
back, as a coach, in third grade, I was always friends with the kids in the class who were being bullied or not being paid attention to. And I remember my parents at some point saying, I think you're going to be in a helping profession. I think you're just naturally drawn to that. And then in college, as I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I didn't realize coaching was not a well-known thing in the early 2000s, but now looking back, that's what I was always describing, right? And so I really love helping people when they're trying to rediscover their joy or their purpose, go back and say, what's the thing you've always been doing without realizing it? What's the thing that's come easy to you, that's felt joyful, that you've discounted as meaningful? Because if you're discounting it, it's probably the thing you're best at.
Yes. Yes. I'm just so amazed that we're in sync.
Yes, we are.
So, needless to say, I generally ask, do you feel like you have a sense of purpose in your work? But all right, for the
Yes.
sake of the conversation,
Yeah.
say more why about you say yes to that answer to the question.
Oh man, there's so much I could say about purpose. Um, for me, purpose is about something that's bigger than me.
Hmm.
And I almost get emotional when I think about it because the transformation I get to see in my clients they describe the work we do as magical. I feel like I'm the one witnessing the magic. And what's so cool about it is I work with these good for the world organizations and entrepreneurs. And so I get to have this ripple of impact
Hmm.
where I call that's my ROI. I don't return on investment, no, ripple of impact. And the purpose I see is in, oh wow, I've transformed this one person in front of me or this group or this team. And then I watch them make the impact in the world. So I've
Hmm.
had clients in things like conservation and activism. And so yeah, I feel like everything I do is purposeful because everything I do is going to have an impact well beyond the time I'm spending with the human being in front of me.
Yes.
And I'll never get to see it. It's almost like an iceberg, right? So I have to
Yes.
sort of make it up in my mind.
Yes.
But boy, is that fun.
And I love your phrase, your reframing of ROI, ripple of
Yeah.
impact. I love that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that. Very creative and it
Yeah.
makes the point.
Yes.
How do you determine the business is good for the world?
That's a great question. It's a lot of trust in the person, but what I am often looking for when I'm having an initial conversation with somebody is there a mission? They have a mission statement, Or do they have a purpose statement? Or is there something that's keeping this executive or this entrepreneur up at night and bringing them to tears?
Mm,
And I don't try to be super judgy, because if I was going to say, you know, I have a list of what's good for the world, then that's coming from my perspective and my bias about what's good for the world. And
right.
so I'm trying to be really open and really look at, does this person that I want to work with, do they feel a sense of purpose, a sense of mission? Do they
Uh,
want to make the world a better place from their lens?
uh,
Which has led me to some really cool clients, up to some interesting things that, I've had several clients come to me and say, are you going to judge me for what I do? And no, I'm
mm,
not.
yeah,
Um, because if you believe you're doing good in the world, and I don't see, I mean, I've never had someone come to me where that looks like they're doing explicit harm either.
right.
Um, but if there's something that's keeping their heart engaged, I'm in.
Yeah, yeah. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I was just curious about that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Um, so this podcast is for what I call high achieving women.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give you my definition of high achieving women because
Yeah.
you might have yours and so many people have their own, right?
Yeah.
So, a high achieving woman is a woman who is generally responsible, goal oriented, ambitious in a positive way, ambitious,
Mm-hmm.
um, good at a couple things.
Yeah.
And because of that, people come to her in a professional life, just random, let me pick your brain or advice, or they're the one, or even at home in the personal life, family, friends, associates, uh,
Mm-hmm.
asking for advice about random things,
Mm-hmm.
any random things. And so they tend to be the ones who are supporting others
Mm-hmm.
professionally and personally. And now they're at a point where they're, like, as I mentioned before, they're craving, yearning for more meaning
Mm-hmm.
and purpose in what they do. But
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones that's always supporting others. So I thought, why don't we come together and support each other?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, with that backdrop, what's some advice you would give to the woman I just described?
Well, first of all, just the idea of finding support
Mm,
is a big thing. Um, and I would say finding space and time. So almost every woman I've worked with as a client is so busy taking care of everybody else and being
mm,
the advice person, or, being mom, being wife, being executive, being whatever, that they're not creating space for themselves. And so the first thing I would say is you matter first, and that the only way you can serve other people is to first serve yourself.
mm,
And so I would imagine sitting anybody down and saying, how do we create the smallest space for joy?
mm,
And what does that mean for you? Does that mean 5 minutes a day? Does that mean 30 minutes a day? Does it mean, yeah, going back to this thing you did as a child? Like, I played basketball as a child. I've just joined a basketball league in LA so that I can, go back to that space of joy. And I would say do something just for you that has actually no purpose. I'd go play.
mm. Yeah.
So, we talked about high achieving women being goal oriented. We are all taught that if we're not achieving goals, if we're not striving for goals, we're not being productive enough,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So, and to actually go back and find purpose and meaning, go do things without purpose and meaning, go play, go make space for joy, take care of yourself first.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Dr. Erin, you have been so
Yeah.
generous with your time and your gems, just dropping gems throughout the
Yeah.
interview. Is there
Yes, you're
anything
welcome.
that I haven't asked you that maybe popped in your mind while we were speaking? Any one more thing? If not, it's okay. But and then we can tell people
Yeah.
how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So one thing that's, I think, really important, and it's especially, again, is true with high achieving women, um, is that when things are tough, whether it's we've had a lot going on in the world in the last couple of years versus or personally, we can feel guilty about seeking joy. We
Mm,
feel like it's not our place. How dare I seek joy when, something is happening out here in the world? How dare I seek joy if things are not going well in my personal life? Or how dare I seek joy if things are not going well being like a business owner, right? And something I like to really emphasize is that joy is fuel for resilience. We need joy. Again, we have to take care of ourselves if we're going to take care of others. And so I really love this book by Karen Walrand. It's called The Light Maker's Manifesto, how to how to make change without losing your joy. And she
Hmm.
talks a lot about daily joy practices. And one of the things I've created is I like this idea of keeping your joy tank full. And it's not like a gas tank where you run it to the ground and you fill it up every month begrudgingly, or every week, however much you drive. It's you keep it completely topped off. And so I really encourage daily small joy practices to keep your joy tank full. And it could be something as simple. I have 4 ingredients of joy in my book: connection, curiosity, creativity, and courage. And I say, what's one tiny act of connection I can do today? It could be texting a friend. What's one tiny thing I can get curious about today? What's one tiny act of courage? And so I just want to remind everyone who's listening that joy is a necessary fuel for resilience. Do not feel guilty pursuing it, and do it every day so that when things get hard, you have that fuel to draw on.
I love it. Tell us those 4 again.
Yeah. So connection. So connection can be connection to self, connection to purpose, connection to others, curiosity, creativity, and courage.
Courage. What's an
Yes.
example of an act of courage that you've seen from others?
I mean, I'm going to go with tiny things. So
Yes.
it could be texting a friend and asking for help.
Oh, not so tiny.
Yeah. And that actually is 2 ingredients, right? Because it's connection and courage. But I want to emphasize courage because so often we're trying to we go after goals and we want to get there easily. We don't want challenge. We don't want failure, right? So many of us are afraid of failure. And the thing I've come to realize through other mentors talking to me about this is that if we don't have challenge, if we don't have obstacles, if we don't stretch ourselves, we're bored. We don't feel very purposeful.
Yes.
So joy requires courage because joy requires us to do things that might be challenging and create obstacles because at the end of the day, that's what creates a sense of satisfaction.
Yes. I love that. I love that. And,
Yeah.
as you were speaking about joy, I was just reminded, it came back to my mind that just a few episodes or so ago, I did an episode called Take a Joy Break.
I love it. Well, we're very aligned.
Yes, we are. And so I appreciate what you're
Yeah.
talking about and all the tips that you gave us and the real sound advice that you gave us here
Yes.
today. I'm imagining people are wanting more. Where can they be in
Yes.
touch with you?
Yeah. So they can find me on LinkedIn. I think it's Erin Michaela Baker on there. They can find my book on Amazon. Just remember to spell it joy-full, because I have a whole distinction between what we call joyful versus joy-full.
Hmm.
And then you can find me on my website, erinmbaker.com. And the M is important. There's a lot of Erin Bakers out there, so erinmbaker.com. And you
Okay, we'll
can
be
get in touch with me directly there.
great. We'll be sure to have those in the show notes and the
Yeah.
description.
Yeah.
Dr. Erin Baker, thank you so much for sharing your
Thank you.
joy with
You're
us.
welcome. Thank you for having me.
Okay, everyone, I'd love to hear your response to the episode. Head on over to the podcast website, leadershippurposepodcast.com, leadershippurposepodcast.com. Or if you don't want to go to the website, on social media, mostly on LinkedIn, but on all the channels at Robin L. Owens, PhD, at Robin L. Owens, PhD. And I'd love to hear your response and where you are in your thinking about joy. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin.